Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for moving us into a much cooler room.
Yeah, much cooler.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Director Ray, for being here. I'd like to ask you about a number of things, China, Iran, Russia. The thing is I think politically there's not that much daylight between us on these issues. We largely agree on these threats. What there seems to be disagreement over, politically speaking, is the source of the domestic threats that we're facing, the vast amount of looting, rioting, and destruction that's occurred in our country over the last few months. I don't understand why we disagree on these origins, but we do. There's been a lot of peaceful protests. That is absolutely true. There's also been more than 550 declared riots, many stoked by extremists in Antifa and the BLM organization. A recent report indicated between $1 and $2 billion of insurance claims will be paid out. That doesn't even come close to measuring the actual and true damage done to people's lives. Not even close. That's just insurance. We've heard multiple reports of small businesses without any insurance whatsoever. Some of these will never open up, even if they did get insurance payments. And I've heard many members of this body, of this committee, question whether Antifa even exists. Director Ray, earlier you confirmed Antifa does indeed exist, but you considered it more of an ideology than a group, correct?
Yes, an ideology or maybe a movement.
Okay. That seems to me to be downplaying it. And this is an ideology that organizes locally. It coordinates regionally and nationally. It wears a standardized uniform. It collects funds to buy high-powered lasers to blind federal officers, build homemade explosive devices, feed their rioters since they clearly aren't working, and then bail out those who've been arrested. This is an ideology that has trained its members, makes shield wall phalanxes to attack federal officers. It formed an autonomous zone in an American city and besieged a federal courthouse in another. So, I mean, it just seems to be more than an ideology. Do you have a way to define what you mean by it's not a group?
So I want to be clear that by describing it as an ideology or movement, I by no means mean to minimize the seriousness of the violence and criminality that is going on across the country, some of which is attributable to that people inspired by or who self-identify with that ideology and movement. We're focused on that violence, on that criminality, and some of it is extremely serious.
And you mentioned before three categories: the criminality, the peaceful protesting, but then, you didn't use these words, but I will, ideological rioting. I think that sort of matches that third category of what you said, the people who purposefully want to instigate it, Antifa being clearly one of them. So I want to read you the definition of domestic terrorism. Section 2331 says, domestic terrorism has three components. A, involve acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of the criminal laws of the United States or of any state. B, appear to be intended, first, to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. Two, to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion. Or three, to affect the conduct of a government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping. And C, occur primarily within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. Does that at all match the activities of Antifa?
Well, certainly matches the activity of some of the individuals we're investigating and have pursued other kinds of charges against. You put your finger on a little bit of a legal predicament, which is that there is not currently in Title 18 a domestic terrorism offense or crime as such. There's a definition.
That seems pretty specific.
Well, there's a definition, but ironically, there's not a, unlike on the international foreign terrorist side, there's not a crime of domestic terrorism that you can charge. So typically, we, in domestic terrorism cases, including of the sort you're describing, we're pursuing explosive charges, firearms charges, rioting charges you mentioned, or other.
Are you prevented from, say, following the money, following the websites that these groups are clearly organizing? Again, it seems strange to me that we can't call it a group.
We're not precluded from following the money,
Okay.
And as I said to Congressman Bishop, we have a number of investigations where we're chasing.
One more question before my time runs out.
There's not a material support to offense like there is. You know, we could do material support to Al-Qaeda or ISIS. There's not a material support to a domestic terrorism.
One more question. The FBI's civil rights investigation can target law enforcement officials who willfully fail to keep the public from harm in violation of the color of law statute. Does that apply to mayors and city councils who have restrained their police departments, such as Mayor Wheeler in Portland, Mayor de Blasio in New York, and the Minneapolis City Council?
Well, respectfully, I think that's a legal question that I would want to defer to the Attorney General and Department of Justice on whether that would apply there.
Thank you. I yield my time.
I think the chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr.